I'm going to show a video clip from a segment that I just did for Studio 5. For those of you who are not local, you may not be familiar with what Studio 5 is, but it is a home and lifestyle show that is based out of Salt Lake City. It goes all over Utah, parts of Idaho, parts of Nevada. Anyway, and I've been a monthly contributor for them for, oh my goodness, about 11 years now, which is hard to believe. And I just did a segment for them that aired like a couple weeks ago. And I realized that I have not shared it with our audience yet. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to share that with you so that no matter where you live, you can see it. And it's just a little tutorial on how I do the steps needed to do quilting on your sewing machine, on your domestic sewing machine. So I thought that would be my how-to today. and share that with you, and hopefully you can learn something about you're using your domestic machine to quilt your own quilts. So that's what I'm going to share today, and then we'll have a daily deal. Sound good? All right, so let me pull this up right now and take a look. Grab that, and here we go. So Brooke Walker is the host. They've been doing some segments with me from our actual store. Normally I go into the studio and do the segments, but with COVID and everything, they've come to the store and done it, which is pretty cool. Jeanette says they get some of the Utah stations in Wyoming. Awesome. And so this one was filmed in our store, and again, I'm just sharing with you some tips I have for being able to sew on or quilt, I should say, on your domestic sewing machine. So let's go take a look at that right now.
Of course, we should say for the really...
Okay, let me pull this back. Okay, there we go.
So this fall, you may find yourself settling back into some hobbies of your own, or maybe you're setting out to try new ones. We asked our friend, fabric artist Kris to give a little more in-depth look at what it takes to be able to machine quilt with your at-home sewing machine.
You can see right here, there's lots of different lines and different, quilt designs throughout the quilt that really make everything come together as a masterpiece. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you some of the tricks of the trade to get that quilting done. So the first step is we need to make a quilt sandwich. Now, I know that sounds kind of funny, but let me tell you what that means. So basically what you're going to do is have your backing fabric of your quilt, and you're going to have it right side down. Place your batting on top of that, and then you're going to place your quilt top on top of that. So see? Therefore, we got the quilt sandwich, right? Now, there's a couple ways that you could actually baste all three of these layers together. One method is by simply using something like this. Yep, it's a safety pin. Now, I would prefer actually not having to deal with the pins myself. So one of the methods that I actually go to more often is using the spray basting method. You can use a product such as like a 505 or a 202 spray. Basically, it's just a temporary spray adhesive that you give lightly just in between the layers. You fold it back on top of itself, and all of your layers are basted together. So now I'm going to take my quilt sandwich over to my machine. But this time, I got to decide which foot I'm going to use. There's a couple different feet that are perfect for quilting on your own sewing machine. One we call a walking foot, and one we call a free motion foot. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the walking foot first. And I want to tell you, one of the reasons why you want something like this, and every machine brand has one, is because it's like having feed dogs on the top of your presser foot, just as you do at the bottom. So what it's going to do is bring both of those layers together at the same time, at the same rate. It's going to reduce puckering and give you a much smoother finish to your quilting. I'll go ahead and place this right on and screw it closed tight. So in this example right here, you're going to see a quilt that has simply been done with just what we call straight line quilting. And our walking foot that I am putting on here is exactly the foot we want to be able to do this. It's so simple, and if you want to, you could draw lines on beforehand and follow those lines. But there's another great little tool out there called a quilting guide. And this quilting guide I can simply insert into my presser foot, and take a look at that. If I push this down on the line that I just sewed, guess what? I have a perfect consistent stitch directly parallel to the first line. If I want my channels to be smaller, I can even push this in even a little bit further and have two lines that are not so far apart. And there you go. So again, here's an example of straight line quilting. But let's say you want to get a little bit fancier and a little bit more brave. Go ahead and try putting on your free motion foot, and now you can see how we can do loops and swirls over here and feathers, anything you want. You can be as creative as you want with your quilting when using the free motion foot. The next step is I'm going to use the help of these wonderful gloves. They kind of are a little different because they have grips at the fingertips. And what this allows me to do is actually take my quilt and have a much firmer grip onto the quilt top so that I have more control as I move it through the machine. Now, this is your time just to have a lot of fun with your project. If you take a look at the flowers here, you could simply just go around each one and then you would have a definite pattern to follow. But you know, on this one, I'm just gonna play around and move this quilt all the way around the bed of my machine. If I need to stop, I can stop, take a pause, and reposition my hands. I could do swirls and loop-de-loops. Stop, reposition. The more you practice, the better you will become as a quilter. So don't be afraid of it. Go ahead, try out some different samples on your sewing machine and see how much you get addicted to being able to do quilting on your own machine.
Kind of mesmerizing to watch. Of course, we should say for the really big projects, Kris's team will quilt for you on their long arm quilting machine that takes up an entire room. You can find out more at mygirlfriendsquiltshop.com.
Okay, there we have it. There we have it.
Expensive shopping spree, and instead shop.
There we go. So anyway, that was that. I hope you enjoyed it.